Welcome to Elevate Online. I'm Pastor Derek. So glad you joined me tonight. Hey, just want to remind you, if you're ever able to join us in person, we do have Elevate Live every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Normally it's at the church in the church sanctuary. We open the doors 10 minutes before. That's how it's going to look next week. Tonight, we're actually doing Elevate Live outdoors and same time, but outside. So love for you to join us if you're able to. Campfire Conversations are continuing this Friday. They're from 8 to 10 p.m. Remember, each week is for a specific small group, and this Friday is for our high school girls. So if you're a high school girl, we'd love for you to join us from 8 to 10 p.m. We're going to be at the McFarland home, and don't worry, we're going to text out the address of that so you know where to go. And it's just going to be a great time connecting as a small group, making s'mores together, and just a great time. So 8 to 10 this Friday, high school girls, this is your week, all right? At the end of this month, on October 28th, during our Elevate Live, our regular time, we will be having our seventh annual Pumpkin Fest. And this is always a great night. Of course, it'll look a little bit different, but we're still going to be bringing a lot of things from Pumpkin Fest that you guys love, including our costume contest. So encourage you, come in a costume, and we will be giving prizes to the best costumes, most creative, and then also just wearing the costume gives you a chance to win things and just be a part of things in a unique way. And here you see on the screen some guidelines on your costumes, nothing scary, gory, offensive. Stay away from anything political because you're gonna hurt somebody's feelings or offend them if you do, no matter what you do. And also make sure it has nothing to do with evil, like demons, witches, etc. And please make sure your costumes are modest. Talk to your small group leader if you need that, explain what that means, all right? And just would love for you guys to participate in that. It's gonna be a great night. Here's for some inspiration. This is our crew from last year. Wow, that seems like a lifetime ago. But this was our Pumpkin Fest last October. So there you go. As I said, tonight is Elevate Live Outdoors for those doing Elevate Live, but we do have one more November 4th. And so that's the week following our Pumpkin Fest. Love for you to join us, and you see the address there. Just a reminder, ways to stay informed. You can pick up a calendar info sheet at elevateparents.org. All the stuff going on through the rest of this year and other information you will need. And don't forget, texting is one of the biggest ways we communicate with you. Text Elevate Students at 31996 to receive updates. Follow us on Instagram, great way to interact there. And I already mentioned elevateparents.org. All right, well, we're kicking off a new series tonight, but before we get into that, I want to play a game. And so this is called Console Wars. And I don't know if you're a gamer, if you prefer Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, any of those, but here's a quick game that I would love for you to just, where you're at, just interact and play right now. Conflict is a part of, sadly, our fallen world. And lately, conflict doesn't just seem to be all around us, no matter what you do. Whether it's, you like sports, what sports team do you like? Or what do you think about this or this opinion? I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And, even in that community, you say, I like Star Wars. They're like, well, do you like the original trilogy? Or are you one of those prequel people? Or please tell me you don't like the sequels. I'm like, I like all of them. Well, that's weird. You have to feel like you have to take sides, or no matter what you say about anything can be controversial. And, if you're a gamer, we just played a game, called Console Wars. Do you like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo? What does this look like? And we divide in so many different ways in our world. We say, okay, you have to be this or this. And if you don't, we're going to argue. And we can easily get into conflict with people that we care about or people that we hardly even know on social media. And so it can feel like a daily boxing match in a ring with a T-Rex, right? That's sometimes how our world can feel. It can seem at times unavoidable. And conflict, yes, is a part of our world. And so it's important as a Christ follower to know how to deal with conflict in a redemptive way. Jesus cares about how we as Christ followers deal with conflict. And so in this series, we're going to take a look at how to deal with conflict. We're going to start with how to deal with conflict in our community, meaning our faith community, our church, at Elevate. It has to start there. And then outside, beyond the church, in our relationships, what we'd say beyond the church, I feel like it's important to start as a faith community to talk about this. And then beyond that in our relationships. And then the last week, we're going to talk about how do we deal with conflict that is with those who actually choose to do evil. Right? Because a lot of times our conflict is just differing opinions. Two good people who just can't see eye to eye or aren't taking time to listen where the other person is coming from or aren't taking the time to hear their backstory, which we'll get to that next week a little bit more about how it's more important to seek to understand others than to worry about whether you're being say, hey, you better understand me, but saying, hey, first, I want to listen to your story. I want to understand where you're coming from and being redemptive that way. We'll talk about that more next week. But sometimes people just choose to do evil. And how do we deal with that conflict? Well, Jesus has some very creative ways that he teaches us in his word about how to deal with that. So this first week, I want to focus on how to deal with conflict in our faith community. That means the church, the global church of Christ followers, and specifically here at Elevate and in the church as a whole. The church, it's full of people. I don't know if you know that. That is what makes up the church. And so conflict is inevitable because it's full of you and me. The first century church, they dealt with a lot of conflict. A lot of, if not most of, the New Testament is made up of letters to churches on how to navigate specific conflicts they were dealing with. A lot of them were written by this guy named Paul who said, hey, I heard about this conflict that's going on. This is how you need to navigate that in very specific ways that they could navigate it in their context, which we, even 2,000 years later, could still learn so much godly wisdom from. The church is diverse, and that's a God thing. God calls for our communities to be diverse because he's a very creative artist. He created people different. He created us all different. And that's a thing that we need to embrace and love. That's a good thing. But out of that can also come conflict because we come from different backgrounds. We have different opinions and worldviews on things. And in an ideal world, this can help us see things clearly and help more clearly and help each other as saying, okay, is how I view things, how God sees things. Let's help each other. But sometimes we don't let it get to that place and we just let it be conflict and cause us to divide over it. We all have different opinions, different worldviews. And you may be surprised to know that our adult sponsors, our leaders, your small group leaders, all have some controversial opinions that may offend you.
I believe Hawaiian pizza is the best pizza.
I believe Nickelback's not that bad.
I believe Wawa is way better than Royal Farms.
I believe that Popeyes makes a superior chicken sandwich to Chick-fil-A. I mean, that spicy one with the sauce, and also their fries are better. And now they say, I mean, come on, they say now my pleasure. So, sorry, but Popeyes is better.
I believe hot sauce on pancakes is better than grape jelly on hot dogs.
Well, tonight I want to get back to the Gospels for our scripture reading and look at the 12 guys that Jesus called to be his disciples, his followers, and those he entrusted with carrying his mission after he ascended into heaven. These were a diverse group of guys, came from a lot of different perspectives, different agendas. And so let's check this out. It comes from Mark 3, verses 13 through 19. Afterward, Jesus went up on a mountain, called out the ones he wanted to go with him, and they came to him. Then he appointed 12 of them and called them his apostles. They were to accompany him, and he would send them out to preach, give them authority to cast out demons. These are the 12 he chose: Simon, who he named Peter, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, but Jesus named them sons of thunder, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him. Well, as you see this list, this is a diverse group of guys. In this list, there's a lot going on that could and sometimes did cause conflict among them. If you really look at knowing some of their stories, there's political differences, some very different ends of the spectrum on what they viewed politics. There's family conflict in there. There's social and economic differences. There's the ones who got more time with Jesus. We've seen the story. There's some that got more time with Jesus than others. And there's ones we know a lot more about, and then some we really just know their name. Not much beyond that. And there's tensions about money and power, and a guy who got so frustrated with Jesus over that he ended up betraying him. You probably know that story. It's Judas. Well, let's talk about some of these. Well, first there's Simon. It says Simon the Zealot. I don't know if you saw that. And this is very fascinating because there's Simon the Zealot, and there's also Matthew, who we know from his story, who was, before he started following Jesus, a tax collector. Now, these are two guys who would see the world completely different. Their politics would be completely different. Their worldviews would be completely different. See, by Simon, he was a zealot, which meant that he was part of a group who actually believed, so the Israelite people during this time were under the government of Rome. And they believed that was, not okay, and which very few Israelites did. But they believed that the part of bringing about the Messiah would be actually causing an actual war against the Roman government. And how they did this, they practiced like guerrilla warfare, or we would actually call them, terrorists, actually. And so he was part of a group that would often, there would be a Roman guard and a crowd, and they believed they were doing God's will by actually stabbing the guy, killing him, and then disappearing into the crowd. They believed that they should commit violence against any Roman, and especially against any Jewish person who were aligning themselves with the Roman government. Okay, so remember that. That's Simon, his worldview he's coming in with when he starts following Jesus. And then there's Matthew. His job was a tax collector. Now, tax collectors, how they made their money was they were asked to, the Roman government said, I need this much money from the people. You gather that. Now, you are legally allowed to say any amount you want over that. And how much you say the government they owe the government, you get to keep the extra that you add on. Can you see how they would not be liked very much? I mean, IRS is not very liked, but at least they don't do that, right? This is a whole other level. And tax collectors, they would ask people who were actually Jewish to handle the Jewish people. And so they were seen as traitors. They were seen as people who are making money off of a corrupt government who is oppressing their people. Can you see how Simon the Zealot and Matthew the tax collector would have issues with each other? Because Matthew was the type of person that the people that Simon associated with would want to assassinate. They would want to do away with. Now, we don't know how zealous Simon was in that and Matthew, but we do know the groups that they're a part of, automatically they would have issues with each other. And yet, they all spent every waking moment with each other for 3 years. Can you believe that? Oh, just over 3 years, actually, 3.5. That's amazing, right? What could bring them together? and help them throw down the walls and the labels they would have for each other. Man, you want to talk, you think things are politically tense now. I mean, these two would have been at the really opposite ends, and yet Jesus brings them together. Huh. And then we have family conflict. There's James and John. They're known as the sons of thunder. That kind of gives you a picture of how intense their relationship could be, right? Brother rivalry, right? They were intense. They're intense in some ways with each other because they're brothers. Brothers get on each other's nerves sometimes. And then also they had this family dynamic where they kind of wanted their family to be established. There's this story of their mom coming in and said, hey, I want my sons on your left and your right in your kingdom. And Jesus saying, you're not even getting what this is about. Of course, that would cause tension of power struggle, like saying, hey, wait, why do you get that? And all these things. And so there's that conflict. There's social and economic differences. The fishermen, they were low on the social ladder and the economic ladder. They were on the wrong side of the tracks. There were those people that were more of an issue, like to stay away, I don't want to associate with you, and people at different levels of that. And then there were ones who got more, as they say, got more time with Jesus. And one, John was literally referred to as the disciple whom Jesus loved. You ever feel like someone else is a favorite, right? I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it caused animosity and conflict in the group. And then there were tensions about what to do with money and the power and how they view what Jesus' kingdom was supposed to be, even though he's saying, my kingdom is not of this world. It's not about governments. It's not about war. It's not about all these things. And yet they still didn't get it. And one got so tense about it, the one who was in charge of their money as the group, Judas, he ended up betraying Jesus because Jesus didn't align with who he viewed he should be. You know, all this to say, if these disciples were in middle school or high school, they would have definitely sat at different tables at lunch, right? Yet, what brought them all together is also what broke down the walls and labels of division. That was Jesus. See, they had all the reasons to never associate with each other, all these reasons to have conflict, all these reasons to have issues with each other and never hang out. And yet, there's someone named Jesus who brought them together. Jesus is who united them. And it's Jesus who unites us as a church. If you're a Christ follower, the one who unites us is Jesus. And it is his lens of love that we're called to see each other, not through the labels of this world, not through the things that we try to throw. And we're not called to see each other as just a problem to avoid. We're called to see each other as a wonder to behold, because every single one of us is a creation of God. And he says, man, I love you. I created you out of love, and Jesus died for them. And we are called to live in community as followers, to share his good news, share his hope, his redemptive work in our world. See, it's Jesus who unites us, just as it was Jesus who broke down those walls. I mean, think about it, how, man, it could be only Jesus who could bring all these people together, right? And yet they worked together. They lived together. They ate together. They spent every waking moment together for 3.5 years because they focused on Jesus, not on their differences. And that is the main point I want to get across to you tonight, is that we need to, when we're dealing with conflict in the church with other Christians, because there are Christians who are going to have whack ideas, or just some that you may not agree with. And you know what? Who knows? You might be the one who's wrong. You might be the one who's right. I don't know. That's not the point. The point is how we deal with conflict in the church with other Christ followers. We need to focus on the who, not the what. We focus so much on the what and we miss the who. And what I mean by that is we need to focus on who unites us. The same person who united the disciples, Jesus. Focus on him and his calling in our lives, and let him mess with us on how to deal with conflict and how to show love and redemptive hope, and say, not to let pride sink in and say, it's about me proving that I'm right. I have the truth and I need to prove that I'm right and you're wrong. No, it's about focusing on who unites us and saying, hey, I love you, brother. I love you, sister. Let's work this out together. And let's focus on the who unites us, not on what divides us. So often all we can see is what divides us. And that's missing the God stamp in someone's life. Because so often we just label people, right? We just label them by, oh, you're that, you believe that, or you're that person. You know, we could label just like how you could easily label the disciples, right? They're this person, they're that, they believe this, they believe that. But when we focus on who unites us, man, we begin to see others through Jesus's lens of love. It has to start there, guys. It's not that the issues or opinions don't matter. It's that Jesus is what truly matters. And before we can truly deal with a conflict we have with another Christian, we have to first see them through Jesus' lens of love. Because if we don't, we're just going to get into a meaningless fight that causes division. And have you ever noticed when you're dealing with conflict and fighting with another person, it starts to bring in other people and affect them, right? Because we all affect each other. But when we see others through Jesus' lens of love, even if we don't come to an agreement, at least we see each other with love, respect, and see each other as God's beautiful creation who Jesus died for, right? That's how we're called to see the world. That's how we're called to see each other, and it has to start in the church, has to start with other Christians. And believe me, sometimes, I'll just be real, Christians are the hardest people to show love to, right? I'm just being real. But in the church, if we can't be united and deal with conflict in a healthy way by focusing on who unites us, not what divides us, how can we show love to the world, right? See, that's how the world deals with conflict. We label people by their opinions, by how they're different than us, how we don't agree with them, how we view that they're wrong. But that's not how the church is supposed to see things. Not that we don't have opinions, not that we don't have a worldview, but we see it all of our opinions, all of our worldviews through Jesus' lens of love. And we see it through humility, not pride. It's not about, I want to prove that I'm right. It's about, I want to show Jesus' love. And that's hard, right? And like I said, sometimes it can just feel like we're getting into a ring and boxing with a T-Rex in our world. But Jesus offers us something different. Let's focus on him. Let's focus on the one who loves us, the one who unites us. And you know what? That tends to get our pride out of the way and show his humility, his love to others. And to really say, you know what? Yeah, we're going to see differently in this, but first and foremost, I love you. And that's the most important thing. It has to start here at Elevate in the church before we can show this love outside the church. So each week I'm going to end with a prayer. Some of you may recognize this. We've used it multiple times at different settings here at Elevate. But it's such a wise prayer. It was written by this guy named St. Francis. And I encourage you, wherever you're at, pray this with me. Such a great worldview of seeing the world in conflict and issues as Jesus wants to see, focusing on Jesus and how he wants to use us to be about his bringers of peace. And so let's pray this together. It's going to be on the screen. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Where there's darkness, light. Where there's sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in parting that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. We're going to continue this discussion next week, but I encourage you, focus on the who. Focus on who unites us, not on the what, not on what divides us. Before you go, don't forget, you matter. You belong, and God has a purpose for your life. Till next week, see ya.